Hi, everybody. My name is Toni and Marcolini. Welcome to the podcast. It may interest you to know. I'm very honored to have with me today actor, producer, writer, an author, Dean Butler. Welcome, Dean.
Well, thank you, Toni, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you in New Jersey today.
I read your book, uh, and I have to say, I really loved it.
Well,
Um,
it's very kind of you, Toni. Thank you. You never know when you do something like that how it's going to be received. Um, I wonder if I were to start the project again, would I do it? Would it be the same? Would it be completely different? I don't know it, but these things you step in where you step in and you make choices and you go, and when you get done, it has become what it becomes. So I mean, overall I'm happy with it too, but you just never know how it's going to be received.
well, I'll tell you, I'm an avid reader, so I also read a lot of memoirs. Um, I read a lot of fiction too. Actually, the only thing I don't read, I always say this is a really science fiction. Otherwise, I pretty much read everything. Um,
You.
but what I really liked about your memoir is that you were harder on yourself than anybody else. Uh, and
Welcome to my life.
and I thought that I liked that you only told your own story. You didn't tell anybody else's. And I really liked that a lot. Um, and it's a fast, interesting read, of course. I mean, there's a lot of names people are going to recognize, and there's a lot of there's the oh no, that didn't happen. I mean, there's a lot of those kind of moments too, where you get it, you get a little bit of the gossip feel there with and there are some names, but it's just sort of a rare gift, I think, to be able to tell a story the way you did. A lot of memoirs start with, I was born on a rainy day in July,
Yeah.
which is fine, right? But you managed to hone in on only the pivotal moments in your life,
Mm,
the moments that helped mold you to be who you
mm,
are, and
mm.
to pick like a handful of those and weave them together with, a lot of little juicy stories and a lot of the famous, I guess, part of your character, of your person, who you are in your life, I thought was just very well done.
Well,
So
Toni, I would like to I would like to quote you in online, and if there's anything that you want to say about this that I could share, I love what you've just said about the book, and I appreciate it. Again,
absolutely. I
you
mean,
just never know how something's going to be received. So thank you for receiving it so nicely.
yeah, it was just I loved reading it. It was a really great book. And I mean, I want to delve into some of the stuff. I mean, I don't want to do any spoilers, right? I want to take away the fun of people reading it, but I do want to touch upon certain things that I thought were
Okay.
particularly cool. I didn't know that you sort of get your start on the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That I mean, because San Francisco, because that's where I grew up in the Bay Area, and there were relatively few opportunities to touch mainstream television. And the streets of San Francisco in my youthful era was that show. And so a lot of San Francisco based actors made small appearances on the streets of San Francisco. Obviously, all the big guest stars came out of Los Angeles. They were well known. They were hiring famous, well known people to be guest stars, but that all of those people that populate a show, the local people, the guy behind the counter in the store, the cab driver, those are all local people. And those were wonderful opportunities for hundreds and hundreds of actors during that time frame with Streets of San Francisco, uh, forming that that whatever that the salad of that green salad of what that city is and what life in San Francisco was. That was nice that local people got to do that, and I got to do that for my first dialogue, which was really fun.
Yeah, you talk in the book about, that you're actually your dialogue, I guess, doesn't come until like Richard Hatch
Right,
is Carl
right,
Malden's co-star, but you
right.
did get to do a scene with Michael Douglas. So we know not a speaking part, but you got to do a scene with him beforehand.
It was a silent bit, Toni. So and that is it for an extra. Doing a silent bit is an elevation. It doesn't generate a residual, but you are more present because you are really interacting with the principal. So yes, I was an orderly rolling a gurney with a wounded Michael Douglas down the hall at San Francisco General Hospital. And I don't even remember. I think I'm calling it San Francisco General Hospital. I don't remember the actual hospital, but it was a really great long hallway, and coming off the ambulance and people racing the bottles hanging from it was the plasma and the blood and whatever they had. And we ran this several times. It's a really nice dolly shot where the dolly's pulling back and the gurney's coming forward, um and he was right there. I mean, they certainly could have had a double on because you weren't seeing him until you really want to see him, but he did that ride, and that was pretty cool. And he was a very nice guy. I just remember that, and he's such a super talent, and that was such a great beginning for his career. And he's one of those rare individuals who could leave a television series and not have their career blown up.
Right.
He obviously had a very good pedigree coming into that.
Yeah.
So, when you're Kirk Douglas's son, you're going to get a shot. And he has had, by every measure, an amazing, amazing career. And so I was glad to be able to be there as he was departing the streets of San Francisco, where his career really was launched.
So what's that like, right? That first moment you walk onto a set and so does the same set as Michael Douglas. What's that moment like?
I just think it's really cool to be around people. I think I certainly have always felt this. It's very fun to see people that you've been watching on your whatever you're, back in the day, we were watching on 12-inch black and white televisions, 20-inch color TVs. So people are small and they're contained in these little frames, but it's really cool to walk into a space and see that they are life size. Of course, they're life size, but you don't know that until you see them.
Right.
And then, and it was the same experience meeting Carl Malden later. I mean, Carl Malden, one of the iconic actors of his era. Um,
For sure.
the two of them were spectacular together. Um, they really had a wonderful look. They had that legacy connection to each other with Michael's father and Kirk Douglas and Carl Malden. I mean, it just all really worked. And I think, as I write about in the book, I think The Streets of San Francisco in its era had one of the coolest title sequences of any show on television, with this great rhythmic, this great rhythm track, and quick cuts of San Francisco and the great voice. And I mean, it was a terrific, terrific show. But being there with Michael Douglas was very cool. You got to see the hair. The hair was real. I mean, the hair, sort of blew in the wind, and he just had a great vibe about it.
Indeed. So I read in your book, which I didn't know either, you did a movie with Stephanie Zimbalist. A big fan of hers, right from me from the Remington Steele days.
Sure.
But I liked you tell a story in the book, sort of about how she's treated on set and that last minute switch they tried to make, and
Yeah.
um, but I liked a lot that at a time when men were not uh sensitive, I'll use that word, I guess, to women's issues, I really liked that you stood by her.
Mm,
In
mm.
that. I thought that was quite telling about the character, your character, and I liked, I liked that story quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I think clearly, Tony, things have changed on
Right,
film sets. At that time, so now we're talking about 1977. And my wife, Catherine, who came into the industry years earlier than that, certainly had her share of experiences as a young, attractive woman being put in less than ideal circumstances that would never happen today,
right,
um, because they could, and I don't think it was being, it's interesting. I don't believe that anyone was doing it maliciously. Yes, they were trying to get something that they might not get, but or that they were pushing to get something extra. Um, but it was just a function of how things worked. It wasn't designed to be mean or to be, um, I don't think that there was an intention to exploit, and yet it was exploitive.
right.
You know,
Well, I mean,
that,
it's a great, it's a great story, just about doing the movie, filming the movie, getting to work with her, of course, famous family, great actress.
right.
The fact that you stayed friends, I mean, I thought all that was, kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I just thought I really liked that little moment, that one
Do we want
that
to
she
talk
stood up.
about the moment, or do we want to keep it sort of a? Do we want to keep it a secret? It's a vulnerable moment. This was a vulnerable moment for a young actress at the beginning of her career. And Stephanie was, I mean, she'd worked a little bit. She'd done, half a dozen jobs at that point, but she was on her way to becoming. There was a period of time where Stephanie was the queen of the movie of the week. I mean, she
Yeah,
was everywhere. She was moving from job to job to job to job to job. She had an incredible run, um, and she was being asked to do something that had not been ever discussed with her until the moment that it was just said, "Oh yeah, we want to do X in this hot tub scene." I mean, okay,
yeah,
let people imagine where that goes. Uh, this was before cell phones. There was no payphone we were off in the middle of nowhere in a little lake near Lake Tahoe. In the it was evening. It was a Friday night. There was no way for her to get to her agent and to negotiate this request. And I don't know that it was, look, I'm not going to go so far as to say that it was planned that way to put her in a position where she couldn't ask the question, but the reality was that she had to completely deal with this on her own. There was no help from her team that could smooth this out for her. So we had to negotiate something right there. And since she and I were going to be in the hot tub together, it became a moment where I would have, I was going to have an effect on how that was going to look because of the way we would choose to play it. So, I was, Tony, I was raised in a particular way to treat women in a particular way, to respect women's free agency, to say yes or no. That was a big part of my upbringing. I was not, I'll say I was not always perfect in that department. I certainly pushed some situations, never badly, but I was, I could be a few times in my life I was maybe not the perfect person, but I knew what was right and what was. I had to deal with that barometer that I had been given as a young man about women and dealing with women and respecting women. so when this came up with Stephanie, this was a very easy thing for me to do. There was no, there was no debate within my own head about what am I going to do here. Of course, I'm going to make her comfortable. I'm going to do whatever I can do to make her comfortable in a situation that was a little awkward. And
Yeah. I mean, I like that you highlighted the moment because you highlighted a moment of female strength at a time which that certainly wasn't that common, right? As her standing her ground.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
I also liked how you reacted to that instead of sort of throwing in on what on certainly a more misogynistic side. You really were a true friend, at that
yes,
moment.
yes,
And
yes,
I liked that quite a bit. So it's a nice little story that's in there among a lot. I mean, you have a great little anecdote about Madonna in there. I'll throw that out without giving anything away. But I mean, there's some great stories because you've had this, illustrious career. You've had these opportunities to interact with
yeah,
many
yeah,
famous people across your
yeah,
life, and
yeah,
there's a Hal Holbrook little anecdote in there. I mean, there's a lot of names. There's a lot of people that you've been blessed enough to
yeah,
interact with. So there's a
yeah.
lot of cute anecdotes and stories in the book that I think are very entertaining. And I'm not going to get into any of those because read the book.
So Toni, you're endorsing Prairie Man as an entertaining read, which I really appreciate.
I absolutely am endorsing it. It's funny, it's interesting. It's not only that, like I said, I really, really enjoyed how you took these pivotal moments and you molded them around, bringing us to like how you become you, right? How, how these things impacted you, and you were able to pick those moments out even of childhood. And a
Hmm.
lot of memoirs aren't like that. Like they tell a whole story, like yeah, and then I went here, 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 and you didn't do that. You're like, I remember this moment.
Yeah,
It stuck with me forever, and you tell us that little story, and then you're like, and I remember this moment, and all of us, if we really sat down, we all have those moments, right? We all have that
absolutely.
handful of moments in our head that we go, this changed me, and this changed me, and this changed me.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
tell a memoir, your book is exactly like that. You're like, let me tell you about the top 10 moments that changed me in my life. And that's
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of how it reads, which I appreciated and liked
Nice.
a lot.
I appreciate that you liked that approach. The experience of this is you've read a lot of memoirs and you do a lot of reading. The process of doing this is, and I think it's a common explanation or a process. It is like peeling an onion a little bit, where you start with something that you think is, you think is the inciting event, and then your memory takes you in and in and in. And it's very interesting. And look, and even at this stage, the book is done. It's out. There are all kinds of things I have thought about since that. Oh, why wasn't that in the book? Or why wasn't that picture in the book? Or why, whatever. There are all these things. And you, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, when you're writing something, any project that you're doing, one of the great challenges of any creative endeavor, and one of the tests of it, is to start it and finish it.
Yeah.
And you may not always, you could, I mean, I've got different things that I've done this where it's never going to be done because I'm never going to be prepared to like put it out there. It's just like there's just stuff. But something like this, where you have signed a contract and you've agreed to do something, that's a commitment, and there's no way you can pussyfoot around that. You, at least I don't think I can do that. If I've made the agreement that I'm going to show up and I'm going to accept what they're offering me to do it, I am going to deliver. And so you have to make choices. And uh, some of the best creative people I know talk about the challenge of simply making decisions is the hardest part about doing this work. You have to make a choice. You can't. you can't not make a choice. Not making a choice is making a choice. I mean, there are
Right.
choices everywhere. And so if you're going to finish it, you have to step in, and you're going to allow the onion to peel the way it peels, and it's going to take you where it takes you. And I really enjoyed that process because I like deadlines. I like knowing that I've got to get something done.
That little bit of pressure, right? Some people work
Totally.
better that way because
Oh,
they don't have the pressure. They just, they won't focus on it.
yeah, no, I can procrastinate like just I'm sure like so many people. I mean, I'm a procrastinator. We're all procrastinators. If we have, if we can, if there's something that we're not really totally hooked in on and ready to go, we can sort of find ways to not do it. This is something that I had to do. So there we go. We got
Very
it to
well
the
done.
end. Yeah.
Now I've got to, of course, I've got to get into Little House on the Prairie. First I want to
Well,
know,
of course, because that's the title. Yeah.
did you watch the show? Because it's already on, I think 4 or 5 seasons before you join. Did you watch the show before you joined the cast?
No, I never watched it.
You'd never seen an
I'd
episode.
seen promos. I had lots of promos, because you can't, you're watching television at that time, promos, promos, promos. So, I knew Michael Landon, I knew he was a farmer. I knew that, but I didn't know anyone else in the cast from previous things. Michael was an iconic presence. Anywhere on planet Earth that there were televisions, people knew who Michael Landon was.
Little Joe.
Right. I mean, 14 years on Bonanza, and for years out of many years out of that 14 years, the number one show on television, Michael was known, as that whole cast was, worldwide. So I never, I couldn't figure out, and this was just again, just watching promos. I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching promos, why would this guy who is this, you know, male leading man, shoot 'em up Western star, trade that to become a poor dirt farmer? What? Why
Yeah.
would he do that? I mean, that was sort of a mystery to me, having not seen the show. And it, became very clear to me quickly after starting to watch the show and work on the show. I mean, the why is, Michael had stories to tell, but it was very clear to me what he was trying to do. Um, but I had never seen it before doing it. I had never read the Little House books before going in to audition for this. I was a clean slate coming in to be considered to join this group. And I think, people have said, oh my God, I mean, how could you have done this without knowing what this was? And I think in many ways it was better that I didn't know anything about it. But I also think, and I say this in the book, and if I haven't said it in the book, I've been saying it a lot since the book, that actors, when they walk into a room, carry their whole lives with them when they come in the door. Your whole life experience is on display when you step into a room. And casting directors, producers, and directors make decisions in about 8 seconds whether you are right or not right for this show.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether you've read the book or watched the show, whatever that is, you don't have to have done that. You are either going to fit or you're not going to fit. And it's not that, you could come in the door and they say, oh, he could do this or she could do this. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. But they know very quickly if you're someone that they believe would fit into the world that they're casting for.
Right.
And I think we know for human beings, for all of us, when we meet a new person, we make dozens of decisions instantly about those people. And we just, because it's who we're very intuitive beings. We're taking cues from everything we see. So we make decisions. And I think when I walked in the door, I walked in the door as a well-raised 22-year-old young man who was respectful and good manners, and I think Susan Sukman, who was our casting director, saw that in me, and she needed to test that with reading and to find out if I could actually do this. But she knew from looking at me or sensing me, she knew that I think she knew pretty quickly that I could be someone who could do that. But yeah, there was no prior. And yet, when I look back at what my heritage is, my life legacy is, I was absolutely perfect for Little House in terms of how I was raised, um, thematically what the show was about, and who I was raised to be. And I think Susan saw that right away. And you just can't plan that, and you can't manufacture that coming into a room. You either are that or you're not that.
Yeah.
And most of the casting that I've had, and I think all actors would agree with this ultimately, most of the casting that I've had has been very consistent with who I was raised to be. I mean, you cannot separate yourself as an actor from your life. Your life is part of your toolbox. It's part of your talent. It's as much a part of your talent as the way you read a line, the way you look, the way you sound, the way your emotional being is your talent. And and that is every bit as important as the way you would read a line. I mean, it just because it's your humanity that the audience is looking at and seeing and
So
making decisions.
at the least, you're familiar with Michael Landon when you first walk into a room
Of
with him.
course,
Yes.
of course, yeah, of
So
course.
so what's that moment like for you? Because, coming into it, you certainly had some acting experiences, and being in the same room with Michael Douglas already at that point. I mean, you've had your share of experiences, but that's still a big moment, right? That you're
Oh my
you're in a
God.
room potentially thinking about being a co-star to Michael Landon. What's that moment like?
Yeah, no, it's huge. I don't think that you really, as a young actor, you're looking for opportunities. You're looking for a place to fit in. You want someone to say yes. And you know, coming into a room to meet someone of Michael Landon's caliber, and there were very few people of his caliber out there in his era. I mean, he was really singular as a creative force during his era. I mean, you just think you're sort of pinching yourself the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, can this, can this be real? Am I really in this room? Am I really having a chance to talk to this person and connect to this person and have an experience? Am I
Yeah.
going to be good enough? Can I be, am I going to, can I make this work, or am I going to blow this? I mean, you just, these are, all your mind is whirling when you walk in. And what the advice that I got the day before I met Michael, and I had 3 meetings with Susan Sukman before meeting Michael. Um, the advice that I got the day before coming into the room was just don't act. Just be yourself. Read the scenes, be you, and don't try and utz this at all. Don't push it. Don't just be real. And I think for a young actor, for someone who I didn't know enough about what I didn't understand well enough what I was bringing. I mean, now in retrospect, everything I said to you, over the last 2 or 3 minutes, that's all awareness that's come to me as a result of living. I came into that room at 22 years old. I'm 68 now. I know a little bit more about what this process was. At the time, I don't know what 22-year-old kid has any clue what they're bringing in the door when they come in the door to read. No, I think there are young actors that, and I'm incredibly admiring of this, who really at 22 know who they are. And
Well, I think again, you hit the nail on the head. Their life experience, though, brought them to that moment a little differently.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, right, exactly. Um, I came into that moment as a sort of wide-eyed. I mean,
Yeah.
Melissa Gilbert described me as a hayseed after we'd been working together for, you know, a year. I loved. She said, Laura loves Almanzo, but I'm not the hayseed type, or I'm not into the hayseed type. Um,
And Melissa Gilbert,
and
I should
Melissa,
say,
Melissa had this major crush on Rob Lowe at that time in her life. I mean, that's like, so, yeah, Rob Lowe and I, there's very little visually about Rob Lowe and I that it's the same. Um,
well,
so
there's an age difference there too, right?
yeah, no, he was
I think
definitely closer
he was close to her age
to
because
her age.
that's,
Right.
that
Yeah.
was a little more difficult too, I think, to pin you both together
No
because there
question.
was an
I mean,
age
I'm
difference.
sure that you're going there too. So it's, but to finish up with Michael, meeting him, having a chance to read for him, it was all sort of a dream, and the fact that it worked out. Um, I mean, there is no more impactful yes that I've gotten in my life than that one. I mean, that yes changed or moved me in a completely different direction in my
Oh,
life.
yeah. I mean, that much is obvious, right? There are times in your life when you hit a path, right? That's changes the complete trajectory of your life. And it was clear to me that that moment changed the trajectory of your life as it should. It's a big moment. You're a young actor to get that opportunity. Really thrust you into the public eye, right, in a way
Yes.
you hadn't been before, and suddenly you're getting all this attention. I remember being younger, and you were, like, on the cover of, like, Tiger Beat and and, like, all those, the teen magazines, you became a heartthrob, maybe
Yeah.
unknowingly, especially now that I've read the book. I think you were probably not cognizant so much of that you had. But you had become like a sort of a heartthrob at the time.
It's interesting. At the time, you're just trying to, at the time, really, I was just trying to keep my head above water, to just do what I was being asked to do as well as I could do it, and being when you're involved in something like that kind of a program, and look, people are stars of shows today. Very few people who are, you can look back, say in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, the cast of Friends was thrust into a massive fishbowl of observation. Uh, I mean, that show, those people, where Everybody Loves Raymond, which became a massive hit in its time. Um, because network television was such a powerful delivery force, and it's still the most powerful delivery force of content in the world, but it's competing against a lot of things now that weren't there when we were all there. I mean, the three networks when I started were the big game in the world of televised entertainment. And so if you were there, you were being seen by 20 plus million people a week, every week. And nobody has those numbers anymore. I mean, nobody is getting those kinds of audiences. That pie has been carved up from 3 to 4 pieces, and now to dozens of pieces, if not hundreds of pieces, and or even more. Maybe we're into thousands of pieces. But it is much harder to break through to a mass audience today because of the diversity of content that's out there. Um, so that was that was a very big thing. And so you're trying to sort of manage that and understand that, and look, have fun with it, enjoy it. I mean, as much as I don't know that I got, it's funny. I don't know how much I got that, the heartthrob thing that you're talking about, but I did know my dating life improved.
Sure.
I mean,
I
it
imagine
definitely
so.
improved. I was able to go out with a lot of different people and have great experiences, and everywhere I went, there were people that, nice women that I was meeting and having great experiences with. Um, but I wasn't connecting it to heartthrob.
Yeah,
I didn't get that. This wasn't until years later that going to events that we do, and we've been doing events as a cast for, for as long as, I mean, really for the last 20, 30 years, we've all been doing events supporting Little House on an ongoing basis. And the number of young, or not young women my own age, older women to, 20s, and now even teens, who will come up to me at an event and tell me, watching Little House, that I was their first crush.
sure. Sure. It was a
That's a
big,
very heady experience to have someone tell you that. And it is a beautiful thing to have someone feel safe enough, comfortable enough to approach you in a line where you really are a complete, they're a complete stranger to me. Audiences feel like they know us. We don't know them. But to feel comfortable enough with what they saw all those years ago and what they've enjoyed, to come up to me and say things like that, is just an incredible kindness. Um, it's a beautiful affirmation of what we were doing at that time. For me, also, it is confirmation of how I was raised, to be a certain kind of man. Um, all of that just works, and it's an incredible compliment, and it's really been the great gift of my life. And
well,
I just couldn't be more honored by it.
I have to ask with Almanzo, since he was based upon a real character, certainly it's what we would call today historical fiction, the show, right? I mean, did you have any sense of, uh, I don't know, did you feel any sense of responsibility to get that character right or a certain way because you were creating somebody real? I always wonder if there's a difference between that and creating a truly completely fictionalized person.
Sure, sure. I asked Michael early on in the process, because he was the center of all of this. I said, so Michael, what would you advise that could you make suggestions to me about things you'd like me to read to really understand what we're doing here? And he didn't skip a beat. He said, the only thing you need to read is what I write. That's
Mm,
it. Because he had the universe of all of this in his head. He knew what he was trying to do. So he knew who this character had to be. And he said to me, right after he cast me, we were doing wardrobe fittings and hat selection and that kind of stuff. And when he picked out my first hat, which was this round topped hat, which I loved that hat. And and I was just a sponge at that point. It's like, so why this hat? And he said, well, hats in the Western world say a lot about people. And this character, this Almanzo, needs to be an uncomplicated man. There can't be any agenda. There can't be any cool factor. There can't be, there can't be any, this round topped hat suggests just naivete and openness to the world. And he picked the hat because it's the kind of hat that Dan Blocker wore on Bonanza. And Haas, that character, for people who grew up watching Bonanza in your audience, Haas was an uncomplicated man.
right.
He was a simple, good, decent, earnest, good man. And that's what Michael was telling me that Almanzo needed to be. And I felt like, well, so really, and I didn't know it at the time, but what he was telling me without me understanding it was just be you. Just
Yeah.
just bring who you are, because that you is why he didn't tell me this, but that's why I cast you. He did tell my father that when my parents came to the set one day, and my father sort of wanted to go over and chat with Michael for a minute. Michael was great with people who came on the set, and he pulled up
And
a
the
direct.
set, it looks just like it does on TV. They created like this Western world that you're
Oh yeah,
stepping
yeah,
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We were on the stage at MGM that day, and there were 27 standing sets on stage 15 at MGM. I mean, every interior that Little House used was on that stage. This was the same stage where the Wizard of Oz was shot. The yellow brick road was on the floor of stage 15, very faintly, but it was still there, which was very, very cool, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
But my dad sat down with Michael and said, "Well, why did you cast my son?" And it wasn't necessarily the answer that I would have wanted to hear, but in retrospect, it was the right answer. I cast your son because he has an innocence about him that makes him perfect for what we're trying to do here. And that relationship, that Almanzo Laura relationship, had to be handled with a very open, no agenda, no, it just had to be very pure for the audience to accept it. And I think, well, look, I'd had life experience. You know, lots of dates, I'd had lots of girlfriends, all of that. But the essence that I was bringing was this guy. That's who I was. That's who I was raised to be. That's what Michael wanted me to bring. Nothing more was needed to make this work. And I think as a young actor, you want to complicate it. You want to say, well, I need to do this and this, and I'm making all these copious notes and scripts that are completely unplayable. But I'm making all these notes in the script, trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. And really what I just needed to do was come in the show and come into a scene and just sort of ask myself the question, how would Dean do this? You know,
Yeah.
what's Dean's way of behaving here? I mean, it's not about how Almanzo behaved. No, it's how does Dean behave? Because Dean is Almanzo.
Let's talk a little bit about was it TV Land gave you the most memorable kiss award
Yes. Yeah.
a few years ago for that first kiss you have with Melissa Gilbert, who I'll say writes the foreword for your book. You're clearly still friends,
Yeah.
uh, despite what I think could have been a rocky beginning.
It,
Right?
it was a rocky beginning.
Right. There's certainly a difference in your age, and I guess at the time, as was per normal, somebody of her age, which I think was 15 at the time, you're 22. You
23.
felt a
I
lot
had
older.
just turned 23 when I met her.
Okay. So you feels a lot different, right? While that's nothing 10 years later,
Oh my God.
at
Yeah.
that time it seems like you're at completely different stages of your life. So I think that was probably difficult for her, in the sense that you turn out to be her first kiss ever. And everyone
I
got to
don't
be
know,
part of it.
Toni, just between you and me, I'm not sure that I was her first kiss ever, although I think I was maybe her first romantic kiss. But I think that
Well, yeah.
I think there was probably a little experimentation going on, behind the church, with other young members of our cast, where they were just trying to figure all this out for themselves, and good for them that they were. But I think that, yes, this kiss that has been so well cataloged was Melissa's first romantic kiss.
Right, and it's a very sweet kiss. I mean, you can
It
still
is.
find it. Anybody can Google it, on YouTube. There's plenty of them out there posted. But, um, it turns out to be a very sweet kiss, but it really sets the foundation for your characters,
Yeah.
does it not? I mean,
Well,
it
it's that
creatively somewhat.
kiss. That kiss, Toni, is the sort of the turning point in the series, where certainly for Laura's life in the series, Laura is no longer a little girl in pigtails with a smock dress on, sitting on Pa's lap, getting advice. Laura, in that kiss, becomes a young woman. And she, as one would expect, well, the road was perhaps bumpy to I do, I do. But the audience knew, and certainly people who had read the books knew where this was going. So that kiss was the line that
Sure.
once she crossed that line, it was going to be a different thing, and a different. Her character was going to be different, and the things she was going to be asked to do were going to be different. And I think for Melissa, as a very young 15-year-old, and I can't stress that enough, and I think Melissa would agree. I know she would agree with that because her mother kept her a very sheltered young girl. As much as I think Melissa, as a child of Hollywood, wanted to feel like she was out in front of all this, I think, in fact, Melissa, as a young girl, was probably behind the curve because her mother kept her that way. She was, Melissa was very, assertively raised by a mother who wanted her to be a certain kind of young woman, and was very protective. So I think everything that Melissa was asked to do was, no 15-year-old would be ready to step into what she was asked to do. And it's just a question of, I think, Melissa's talent or Melissa's nature as a human being, which I've come to know over 40 years. Melissa steps in. When there's something that could be frightening and be a stopper, Melissa doesn't stop, she steps in. And that's a huge difference maker for someone, and she's special that way. And she's not alone there. I mean, there are a lot of people who do that, but in comparison to the whole, Melissa's a rarity in that way, that she's willing to step in. But she was tested every day with this, and I think there were days that were not easy for her in the playing of this relationship, and yet, and I've said this in the book, I never detected the level of discomfort that she was feeling. It just,
And you managed to somehow create chemistry, right? Despite the fact that I think there really wasn't any real life chemistry, right? You
right.
managed to create screen chemistry,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, a tribute to both of your acting skills.
Well, I think, yes. I mean, I think we both knew what needed, we both understood what needed to be done. There were certainly days and moments on that set where we were really, in a sort of standoff positions with each other, because we just, it could be, it could be tense on certain days. But when the camera rolled and action was called, we knew what we needed to do. We both understood that. And I'm, as much as I've often thought, Toni, well, wouldn't it have been great if Melissa had been a couple of years older, um, it had a little more life experience, how differently this could have played, how perhaps more nuanced it could have been, a little bit more nuanced than it was. But then it wouldn't have been what it was. And what it was something that has been loved and appreciated for years. And as much as I, think, well, we could have been so much better, but when I look back on it now, we did well.
Yeah.
We did our best, with the circumstances that we had. We trusted the material that we were given. We trusted the people around us to protect us, in this situation, and Michael particularly, who had a very keen sense of how the relationship needed to be played. And here we are. I mean, here we are, for me, 45 years later, and we're still celebrating this. And I just am, I've said it before in this interview, and I'm just so grateful for that. Melissa and I have had lots of conversations about this through the years, and I think we know that while there was never going to be any great romance between us personally at any age, um, but we are a part of something that's bigger than we are, and I think we are both very respectful of what we were asked to do, that we are honored by being given the opportunity to be those people in that situation. um, it's been an amazing thing to be a part of, and it just goes on and on.
So you get an opportunity at a very young age. I guess Shannon Doherty was
Yeah.
on the show, and the late Sharon Doherty. She recently passed away. You do touch upon her a little bit in the book. I was just wondering. I thought maybe to honor her, um, could you tell me the best acting scene you ever saw her do?
um, I just think Shannon was really solid. She looked you in the eye. I can't point to a particular scene for you. I wish I could. I can't. And I, feel this. I mean, she was a little girl when we met. She was 11, 11, 12 years old when we were working together. Shannon was very intentional about what she was doing, and she wanted to be famous. You just could feel that about her. And I think Melissa Gilbert had an intention to be famous as well. I think she really liked that. But even Melissa has said Shannon took that to a whole different level. This was a capable, focused, very highly motivated young person who was determined to make something of this moment, and she did.
And
And
did.
I will always, I have respect, a lot of respect for Shannon, because she knew what she wanted, and she was unafraid in any way inhibited about going for it. She went for it.
Which is a great characteristic, just I think in general. A
Yeah.
lot of people spend their whole lives not knowing what they want. I guess it's a gift to a certain extent to know what you want from such a young age, and then to pursue it and achieve it. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Oh, it is. It is. You're right. I mean, that is not an easy thing to do. She was blessed, informed, inspired. Pick your word, pick your descriptor, but she knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
No question. There was no ambiguity in Shannon about what she wanted to do.
So I cannot. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Battle of the Network Stars. I have to know.
Battle of
I
the
just
Network
have to
Stars.
know.
I don't think, did I even mention Battle of the Network Stars in the
You
book? I don't
don't,
think I
you
did.
don't, but you have the misfortune of being interviewed by somebody who actually, remembers back then. I lived through it. I
Yeah.
remember watching Battle of the Network Stars and seeing you on it.
Yeah.
Uh, and for whatever reason, I always wanted to talk to somebody who was on Battle of the Network Stars to know what was that like? I mean, were those
That's fun.
competitions real?
Oh
Were
yeah.
they? Yeah,
Oh
they were.
yeah.
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 Nothing staged about it. You were actually in the throes of competition.
Oh yeah. I mean, look. I mean, and we're dealing with a group of people who have a whole different range of athletic skills. Um, but what I can say about that is everybody who came to that came bringing their best. I mean, whether even if they were going to be a goof during the thing, if that's what they were bringing it all the way. Um, that was a fascinating little chapter in American television, and of course you had with Howard Cosell, you had the preeminent commentator, opinion maker on television at the center of this, hosting it. I mean, just having the chance to hang around in a place where Howard Cosell was for a weekend, and he was there watching it, um, was the coolest thing.
I would
Um,
think.
yeah, no, it was really fun. This was shot at Pepperdine University, so I mean, I don't know how anyone goes to school at Pepperdine University. This is in Malibu. It's one of the most beautiful campuses anyone will ever go on. With just raising your eyes and looking west, you're looking at the Pacific Ocean. The beach is right there on the Pacific coast in Malibu, which is one of the absolutely most gorgeous parts of Southern California. So this is where they shot this, and it was really, really a fun weekend. And people on network television shows fought for a position on these teams. You had your agents and managers. Well, if they weren't doing it on their own, people were certainly working to get me on Battle of the Network Stars. Can you get me on that team? And there was a lot of maneuvering that went on. I mean, look, some people were going to
It was
pass
big
because
television. Yeah,
what's
I
that?
remember waiting. You'd wait for those, those
Yeah,
episodes. I think it was once or twice a year they had
yeah.
the
I think it's
competition.
twice a year. Yeah, I think they did it twice a year, something like that. It was
Yeah.
really, really great. I mean, it was a fun experience. Only did it once, but at least I can say that I did it, and we had a good time. NBC finished second, um, but we gave it our absolute best. We were
Very
NBC
cool.
was third in the ratings, but we finished second in Battle of the Network Stars. So we bumped up a spot that year.
Balanced it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So working with Angela Lansbury, right? You get the opportunity to do that. I think you made a guest appearance on one of her Murder She Wrote
Yes,
episodes.
on Murder She Wrote, which was great fun.
Iconic
I stepped
actress.
in for Jeff Conaway, who had been playing that role opposite Jeannie Francis, as Jessica Fletcher's niece. Jeannie was Jessica Fletcher's niece, and um, oh my God, I mean, Jeannie Francis was just like, wow. And I just was knocked out to work with her. Talk about an attractive, charming, I mean, a woman's woman kind of. I mean, this was really, she was very special. I really enjoyed that. She was great to work with. I was sorry that Jeff Conaway was unavailable for him, but really happy for me that I got to be that guy for at least for one episode, and it was fun.
You get to do any scenes with Angela Lansbury?
I think there was a scene over lunch or something in a cafe where there was this quick little scene with her. She was so delightful. I mean, and my wife Catherine did 3 Murder She Wrote, I think, through the run of the show. And everybody who worked with Angela Lansbury probably came away, but she's a pro. She was welcoming. She made everybody who came on her show feel like feel that they were so welcome and that she was rooting for them. And when you worked with her, she looked you in the eye. She made a connection. She was fully present when she was working with people, and she just made that work. I mean, this was what a delightful show this was. It's hard to imagine. I mean, people are dropping like flies around this woman. Every week someone is dying. But that's the premise of, there's your premise. But she was just so lovely with it, and funny, and she could do whatever was asked of her. This was a very, an enormously capable actress. There's nothing she couldn't do.
Well,
So
these are like big moments. I mean, getting to work with people like Angela Lansbury and Michael Douglas and, Michael Landon. You've had the opportunity to work with, major people at the height of their careers. So I mean, that's quite a, quite a blessing in and of
Well,
itself.
it
But
is, it is, and look, when you're in that space of time that I was working in, they were, people like that were the people. I think of Catherine Heldman, and in an
oh,
episode
who's the
of Who's
boss,
the
right?
Boss, which was so much fun,
What's that set like? The Who's the Boss set?
and that was, I came into that was very early. It was their fourth episode, so they were just figuring it out. They were just discovering the show. But what a bright, capable, funny, welcoming group of people. I mean, Tony Danza was great. I mean, he's just what he appears to be, I think. And no, I don't know Tony Danza well, but in the times I've seen him in public situations, he's very consistent. And he's great. Judith Light was lovely, and Catherine Heldman was just as quirky and funny as she could be. And
Yeah.
I love the interview. The interview process for that show was really the story. I mean, that was really the fun part about this, is that this sort of May December little flirtation that Mona is having. Catherine, who's a married woman in her 50s, I want to say, well into her 50s when we did that. She wanted to approve whoever the young man was that was going to be her love interest in the show. And of course, the episode called for this big kiss at a moment in the show. And she wanted to try out that kiss with everybody that was auditioning for this, because she needed to feel comfortable. So Catherine came in. Look, Catherine was married herself at that point to a guy who was probably, I want to say, a decade younger than she was. I think probably in that range. She was going to be doing this scene with someone who was probably 3 decades younger than she was. But she had this great sense of fun about her, and so she wanted to know what the kiss would be, and so she got to sort of try out a lot of young kissers, and I was feel happy that she approved our kiss in the room, and I ended up being the guy. But yeah, that was a wonderful set, and I had not done any 4 camera audience audience comedy, live audience comedy before, and it was really fun. It's like doing a little play. You go in and you rehearse, and they're rewriting constantly, but you block the whole show the first day, and then you start doing run throughs right away, and the writers are in the room, and everybody's laughing, and the jokes are being tweaked, and the show is being rewritten right up to the point that the audience is coming in. Even between shows, there are rewrites of dialogue to try and sharpen the jokes and the comedy as much as possible. It's a really fun process, and
Well, you
that was
did some Broadway, right? I mean, you did
yeah.
Broadway as well.
Yeah.
What's your favorite genre for yourself?
Well, it's funny. I mean, look, most of the vast majority of whatever my career, certainly with Little House as being the most significant thing, that's in front of a camera. But I think I probably occur. I'm probably strongest as a performer on a stage, um, and I think probably a lot of that relates to the fact that on the stage as the actor, you're really in charge of what you're doing. And the stage is an actor's medium, film is a director's, producer's medium. As the actor on the stage, you have complete control over what the audience is going to see and experience on every performance. You're in charge of that. You're working with other people, you're coming together, you're doing an agreed upon thing, you've rehearsed this, but you have to hold up your end of the deal every performance. And And
Sure.
I
And that's the
love the,
relationship, right? The
yes,
relationship with the audience, very
no
different.
question. No
Yeah.
question. Yeah. I mean, you have no relationship with the audience working on film. I mean, you can put somebody, you can put an audience in the lens if if you choose to do that, or you're talking to someone, or you're talking to the person you're talking to, and you're being filmed. Um, but yeah, there is a relationship with an audience, and you feel an energy there, and you're reading that energy, and you are playing to that energy, and I love that interconnectivity. And audiences are different. Every audience is different, and you're trying to feel what's happening in a given audience, and deliver the promise of what you've been asked, what you've agreed to do. You're wanting to give them the same experience, but it's always going to be, there's going to be subtle difference because of that interaction that's taking place. And it's very subliminal. I mean, it's not a, it's, I don't know that it's a conscious interaction, but they're there and you feel them and you are playing to them. It's fun.
Yeah, and I know I've gotten way over on the interview. There's just so
Yes,
much to
you
cover.
have, but you're terrific, Toni. I mean, this is one of the nicest interviews I've done. You're a very good conversationalist. I congratulate you. You're really good.
Thank you. If I may, before I let you go, can I just touch upon one other thing
Sure.
quickly? I'll be very quick.
Okay.
It has seemed to me from reading your book that you were the most creatively fulfilled, right, when you were producing the talk show.
Yeah.
Certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's the sense that I got when I read the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted to know, like, your creative process, how would you describe that? Right? Because you have a hand in creating so many things. Arguably, even though you're reading what the writer says dialogue wise, to do scripted, still there's an element of creating the nuance to a
Oh,
character,
totally.
right?
Totally. Yeah.
But then you get this opportunity to do some writing as well, and in the producing, you're bringing so much to it. You describe, an interview with Bill Clinton that you got to be part of in the book, Donald Trump that you got to be part of in the book.
Yes.
So I guess I'm curious, like, what was your process to create, and why did you feel that that was the most fulfilling opportunity that you had? That's what came through to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's, look, I totally feel that way. It's interesting as actors, as an actor, you probably get more credit than you deserve when something's really good, and you take more blame than you deserve when something's bad, when something's not good. There are so many people who are involved, but as the actor, you are the face. The actors are the faces of something, and so the actors are become you become attached to what happens. In the case of Little House, the attachment that people have to it is very good. In the case of other things, they maybe the attachment is not so good, and so those things either go away, or they're, but you have very little to do with that in terms of the crafting of what the thing is. You come in, you do your scenes, and you go away. And if when you're producing, you want your performers to come in, be ready, do their work, and leave. You want them to go, because then the work continues. Other people step in and there's more work to do. I found that for me, it was that other work that had to be done that was every bit as interesting, if not more interesting to me than the work I was doing as an actor. Having the ability to, or having the opportunity, and it's ability, you're honing that, but having the opportunity to start with a blank page and have something that has pictures and sound and a story and all of that at the end, that's a very engaging process to be in. And,
Yeah.
and I think the actor doesn't really get that experience. The actor does their work and they have no control over the scene's cut. I mean, you do your performances, everyone does their performances, and then the editor is cutting that performance to make it what the audience actually sees. They don't see the whole thing, unlike on the stage where the audience is seeing everything.
Right.
Everything that is shown is a bit, and they're taking all that in. Film and television focuses a performance and makes it exactly what, not the actor necessarily, but what the producer and the director want it to be. Others have much more control over the outcome. I loved starting with the blank page in my computer and making those choices about what the audience gets to see.
Sure.
That's really fun. And it is very, very involving when you're doing it. And
Well,
I loved that part of it. And I love the luster that remains around the work I did as an actor on Little House. And I can talk endlessly about the experience, but I had, beyond what I actually did, I have no, I mean, I've had much more effect quietly on the ongoing nature of Little House as someone who supports and advocates for it than I ever had while we were making it. While we're making it, this was Michael's show. And the show was and we were all there to facilitate Michael's vision. And we did it the best we could. And the show's success is evidence that we all did a good job. But I can't take credit for I mean, I can take credit for what I did, but really what I did was shaped by an editor and by Michael and by the composer David Rose, who wrote the underscore that informs the emotional life of the character. Film is such a team thing. And you're all you play your little parts, and the whole comes together, and it's bigger than all of you.
Agreed.
Yeah. So but I liked, as a producer, having a chance to be part of that bigger vision of what it's going to be, for better or worse. I mean, you can succeed, you don't succeed, but the involvement in that, the emotional engagement in that, is really exciting. So I did love it. You picked up accurately on my interest in that.
Well, Dean, I know I've gone way over. I have to let you go. I know you have another obligation to get to. I appreciate that you went over with me. I hope you'll come back and talk to me again, because I could have gone on. I have so many other topics I could have hit. I invite you back. I hope you'll come back and talk to me again.
Well, Toni, you're terrific. And we should talk about when we talk the next time, we should talk about what your dreams are and what's led you to this, because you do it really well, and good for you. Good for you. I think you're terrific. So thank you for
Thank you.
including me and letting me share with you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to close out the podcast. Say, if you haven't picked up this book, you really ought to. It's a very good book. It's an entertaining read. I mean, you'll be affected by the end of it, and I think you'll feel like Dean a little bit better than when you started out. So,
Thank you, Toni.
thank you, Dean.